Welcome back. I'm Rita Cosby. Now for more on the depressing questions raised about antidepressants. We're joined by Ann Tracy, the Executive Director of the International Coalition for Drug Awareness and also the author of Prozac, Panacea or Pandora. She's in Salt Lake City tonight. Ann, interesting title. What's the answer in regards to most antidepressants? Are they a panacea or a Pandora?
After over a decade of working with victims of these drugs, I would tell you it's definitely a Pandora's box.
And why? It seems, I mean, we saw from the last piece, I mean, there's definitely two sides to this story, but how particularly is it affecting kids? There's a whole different ballgame, it seems, from adults to kids.
It is a different ballgame. You're dealing with someone whose brain is not fully developed yet. And like this afternoon, I just talked to a young woman who's lost 5 friends to suicide from these drugs in the last 2 years. She barely survived her own suicide attempt.
And that's what you've done some interesting things in your background. You were a consultant in the case for the Phil Hartman, the actor, the murder-suicide case with him and his wife. Also Andrea
That's
Yates,
right.
of course, the mother who killed her 5 kids in Texas, that horrible case. Is it that severe in children too, or is there a difference that you're seeing between the ages?
It's that severe in children. I've seen small children threaten to kill their mothers or cut babies out of their bellies.
Oh my God. And why, you know, doctors, as we just heard, and obviously that's deeply disturbing to hear things like this, especially from children who, as you point out, their minds have not developed. Doctors, though, on the other hand, are still doing this off-labeling because, as we heard from the doctor in the piece before that Doug Kennedy had, they still feel like it's helping some kids.
That might explain why the largest group I have facing criminal charges on this drug, the largest single group, are doctors and nurses or their family members.
But to what benefit?
They believe fully in these drugs.
But there must be some sort of medical background too. I mean, they said that, look, there is a history, at least in some kids, that it's working. It's unfortunate that in the other cases it is not.
Some kids may have the ability to handle these drugs over time. Look at that horrible case we had in Dallas this summer. The little boy and little girl on Paxil, both of them on Paxil, killed their little brother and buried him out back.
And as we heard in Douglas Kennedy, he was saying 7 of the 12 last school shooters were on Luvox, and another antidepressant. What about federal money?
Nearly every.
Go ahead.
I've worked nearly every one of those cases. It's terrible.
Do you see?
Is even one of those worth what someone might be feeling in the way of feeling good for a while?
No, I mean, of course, the cost of a life is incredible, of course. There's nothing that outweighs it. What about the federal government in terms of its efforts? One of the things I thought was interesting, the Surgeon General, David Satcher, is starting to do sort of a national awareness campaign. But what about funding in particular? And the reason I bring this up, and you're shaking your head, but in terms of funding,
well,
I was astounded.
Thinking that I'm sitting here in the middle of Utah with one of the highest teen suicide rates in the nation, and yet we use double the national average of antidepressants. And when is somebody going to make that connection?
And what do you attribute all that to? I mean, is there also other alternatives that we should be looking at, these herbal therapies, the psychotherapies? Should we be looking at some of the other choices?
There are so many alternatives, and that's what I stress in my book. Look at the alternatives. We've got studies showing that exercise for 30 minutes 3 times a week is 8 times more effective than Zoloft. No side effects either.
What about some of the psychotherapies, some of the psychological approaches too? I mean, better talking, and also better parenting too.
Well, that too, but also look at diet. I mean, our kids live on stimulants anymore. It's caffeine from the minute they get up. What goes up comes down.
Let's talk also about more federal money. One of the numbers I was particularly astounded with, and I'm sure you were shocked, 200,000 people die each year from prescription drugs, yet 20,000 die from illegal drugs. I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. Is it a question of money, better education all the way around?
Well, it's definitely better education. We know nothing about drugs in this country. I mean, how many people know that LSD was a prescription medication? That PCP was out there for 7 years as a prescription medication. We were told it had a large margin of safety in humans. These drugs work so similarly to those 2 drugs. that this country better wake up to that and do it fast. We're losing so many. This is a national tragedy.
It certainly is. Ann Tracy, we thank you very much, and hopefully by having you on we can bring some more awareness to this very serious issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And up next are Saddam and Usama, two peas in a pod. We'll connect the dots with the Iraqi ambassador to the UN.